With just 5 days left ahead of the election, the Trump campaign is celebrating the results of two new economic reports. The Department of Labor has released job numbers for the week ending October 24th. 751,000 Americans filed for first-time unemployment benefits last week. That is down 40,000 claims from the previous week and the lowest numbers we have seen since the pandemic began back in March. In addition, the U.S. economy rebounded at a historic rate in the third quarter of this year. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the U.S. gross domestic product expanded at 33.1%. This comes after the U.S. GDP suffered a historic plunge in Q2 because of the nationwide coronavirus shutdown. For more on this, I want to bring in Mark Hamrick. He's the Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate. Mark, welcome. Great to see you again. So this is the lowest number of first-time unemployment claims since the pandemic began back in March. However, it is the end of October, and Americans are still losing their jobs in large numbers. What is attributing to these latest unemployment numbers, and what does it mean for the overall state of the U.S. economy?
Good to be with you, Tanya, as always. It tells us that there is still ongoing job loss. And just this week, of course, we heard about plans from Boeing to continue to downsize its workforce because travel and demand for commercial jet aircraft remain quite constrained. And so this is a journey. We're continuing along that journey of recovery, but we are not yet recovered. And so even in this latest week, we had more than 22 million Americans on some form of unemployment assistance. As of the last unemployment report, we had more than 12 million unemployed, with hundreds of thousands who've exited the labor force because they don't believe it's prudent for them to look for work at this point. So my view is it's not time to hang up the mission accomplished banner, because we're still digging out of the hole that was created by the downturn and the historic contraction in the second quarter.
And we're also seeing more Americans exhaust their eligibility for unemployment aid as the pandemic continues. How do you believe this will impact the jobless numbers moving forward? And are we getting an accurate snapshot of the number of unemployed Americans across the U.S.? Because it's worth reminding viewers that this is a very specific snapshot of who is looking for work.
I couldn't agree more. This is not intended to measure unemployment. It is merely a snapshot of those who are receiving unemployment assistance. And so there are other measures that are more elegant at outlining what that picture really looks like. But I do think that one way or the other, we're still talking about a historic economic downturn and historic levels of contraction. And the fact of the matter is that as individuals come off of traditional unemployment assistance programs, transition on to the pandemic programs, there is not an infinite amount of aid out there. And that's why there was bipartisan agreement under the CARES Act to provide elevated levels of unemployment assistance and to provide the economic stimulus payments. And of course, that time is now a question that is in the past. And there is a concern about the future, and that's why I think there's been broad agreement that Congress and the president should have agreed to further legislation, and there's a cost to not having that. And now it doesn't even appear, perhaps, that we'll have that during the so-called lame duck session. So that means we're sort of looking forward to next year and just hoping that perhaps they'll be able to get something done then.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about the GDP now, because there's been some historic ups and downs. The national GDP increased by a record 33.1% in the third quarter of 2020, but this rebound comes after a historic 31.4% plunge in Q2. So this is a lot of up and down. What exactly does this mean, however?
Yeah, it can be very confounding and confusing, but you think about the fact that we're coming off of a lower base than before. So it's a little like the hometown team suffered a drubbing in the second quarter of the football game, mounted a bit of a comeback, but is still behind. And obviously, we don't know how this current fourth quarter is going to end up, but it's widely expected that when we end 2020, the economy will have suffered a contraction for the full year. So we can celebrate the fact that there was a strong recovery, but we still need to make up further ground. And there's a huge question mark about this current fourth quarter because of COVID and everything else.
Well, Mark Hamrick, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.